The bark that broke the silence. It was just after sunset in a quiet corner of the city, where light from neon signs flickered against puddles left by an early drizzle. The streets were not empty, but they were quiet enough to hear every footstep, every whisper of wind and every heartbeat that dared to hope. And on that sidewalk, under a broken street lamp, sat a man with a shaggy gray beard, worn boots, and eyes that held the weight of forgotten stories. Beside him lay a scruffy brown dog, curled tightly against his leg, tail flicking in sleep. The man's name was Leo. No one ever asked, but that was it. Once a carpenter, once a father, now just a shadow. People stepped around. The city had swallowed him like it did so many others. But through all the hunger, through every bitter night, there was always one thing he never let go of, his dog, Patches. Patches didn't care about what Leo had lost. He only cared that Leo loved him. And he did, deeply, fiercely, without words. This evening had been good. Someone had left a sandwich near the trash bin, still wrapped. A woman had passed by and handed Leo a bottle of water without a word. And Patches, he'd been healthy lately. No limping, no coughing, no strange signs of age. As Leo leaned back, against the cold brick wall, humming an old tune from a memory he could barely place, he felt something close to peace. But peace in a place like this is fragile, like thin glass over fire. The sound came fast. Engines. Loud, angry ones. Not the steady hum of passing traffic, but the roar of dominance. A gang of 4 bikers turned into the alley, laughing, their tires kicking up water like spit. They were young, careless, and loud in the way only the bored and cruel know how to be. They had no real destination, only the urge to be noticed, to feel like kings in a kingdom of pavement. They spotted Leo in seconds. "Look at this," one of them shouted, slowing to a crawl. "We got ourselves a king of trash." Another laughed. "Yo, you taking care of a mutt now? What's the matter, old man? Couldn't find a real friend?" Leo didn't reply. He never did. Silence had become his shield. The tallest biker, wearing a patch-covered jacket and a smug grin, dismounted. His boots splashed in the puddle as he walked toward Leo. Patches stood up, sensing something off. His ears perked, tail stiff. "Hey," the biker said, bending slightly. "Does your little doggy bite?" Leo raised a hand slowly. "He doesn't want trouble." "Neither do I," the biker said. But there was a glint in his eyes that betrayed the words. Then, without warning, he raised his foot and kicked Patches hard across the sidewalk. The yelp tore through the alley like a gunshot. Patches rolled, legs flailing, before crashing into a trash can and lying still. Leo's breath caught. The bikers laughed, loud, careless, as if the pain they caused was part of some game. Leo crawled toward his dog, calling softly, voice cracking. "Patches, boy, come on." He didn't hear the footsteps behind him, but someone had. From a sleek black motorcycle parked just at the end of the alley, a man stepped down. Had been watching. Not out of curiosity, but because he often chose the quietest routes, the ones where no one looked twice. He liked peace. Silence. Places where kindness could still exist if someone looked close enough. Tonight, Keanu Reeves had taken that path, and what he saw now ignited something deep inside him. He walked quietly, his boots brushing puddles, eyes fixed on the biker still standing over Leo. He said nothing at first, just stood there as the biker turned around. "What?" the young man barked. "Got something to say?" Keanu's voice was calm, like steel wrapped in velvet. "Yeah, your fun ends here." The air changed. The laughter died. The other bikers turned, suddenly unsure. They didn't recognize him at first, not in the shadows. But something about the way he stood, the way his eyes locked on them with absolute focus, made even the bravest one take a step back. Leo looked up, confused, his hand still shaking as it touched Patches' fur. The dog whimpered but moved. Barely, Keanu took another step forward. Apologize to the man. And his dog, the leader scoffed. Or what? Keanu didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch, didn't threaten. He just stared, and something in that silence said more than any scream could. The leader felt it. His jaw tightened, his bravado cracked. "This ain't your fight, man," he said, trying to laugh it off. Keanu glanced down at Patches, then at Leo, then back. "It is now." One of the other bikers suddenly whispered something, and the leader turned pale. Wait, dude. That's him. That's Keanu Reeves." The alley went still. The leader blinked. "The movie guy?" Keanu didn't smile. Sometimes. Leo was shaking, torn between disbelief and confusion. The dog at his side tried to sit up, leaning against him for warmth and strength. The leader stepped back, hands up. "Okay, man, whatever. No hard feelings." But Keanu moved closer. "You don't get to walk away," he said. "You hurt someone who couldn't defend himself. You laughed. That has a cost." There was no anger in his voice, only weight. Truth. Something the alley had not seen in a long time. A soft groan came from Patches, and Leo cried, quietly, his face buried in the dog's neck, and Keanu kneeled down beside him, one hand gently touching Patches, checking him, with careful precision. "We'll get him help," he said softly. "He's strong." Leo looked up at him. Why would you help us?" Keanu didn't hesitate. "Because no one else did. And that's not how the world should be." But just as the bikers tried to quietly mount their bikes, something unexpected happened. Patches barked. Loud, sharp. He stood. His leg limped, but he stood between Leo and the gang, and then sirens, distant but getting louder. Keanu turned his head slightly, expression unreadable. The leader cursed. "We gotta go!" But it was too late. The alley had become something else now. Not just a place of pain and cruelty, but the first spark of something far greater. The kindness that caught fire, the sirens faded into the night, but their echo stayed behind, like the warmth of a fire long after it's gone. The police didn't arrest the bikers. They sped off too fast. But something else had changed. Something deeper. Leo didn't fully understand it then, but the moment Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder, the world began to shift around him. Not just the cold alley, not just the pain in his chest, but the very air felt different. For once, someone had stood for him, not out of pity, not for fame, but because it was right. Keanu didn't make a scene. He simply carried Patches in his arms and asked Leo to follow. They walked 3 blocks, quietly, through dim-lit streets, where even the shadows seemed to hesitate. The city that had ignored Leo for years now watched. People peeked through windows. Some pointed. 1 or 2 gasped. Word traveled faster than traffic in the digital age. By the time they reached the small veterinary clinic tucked between a closed bookstore and an old laundromat, someone had already tweeted a blurry photo. A man helping a dog. A man that looked an awful lot like Keanu Reeves. The vet was kind. No questions asked. She didn't even look surprised when Keanu walked in with a bleeding dog in his arms. Instead, she nodded like this kind of moment had waited its whole life to happen. Leo sat in the waiting room, stiff and silent, unsure if he should speak. The chairs were clean, too clean. His coat smelled of the street. He kept his hands folded, staring at the floor, but Keanu sat beside him, patient, present, and calm. After what felt like an hour, the vet returned. "Your dog," she said gently, "is going to be okay. A couple bruised ribs, a sprained leg. He's lucky." Leo closed his eyes. His hands trembled. "He's more than lucky," he whispered. "He's all I have." Keanu looked at him and said, "Then we make sure he stays with you." What happened next felt surreal. Keanu didn't just pay for the treatment. He arranged for Patches to be watched overnight, fed, bathed, and given the care Leo could never afford. But even more surprising, he turned to Leo and said, "You need rest too. Come with me." Leo hesitated. "To where?" "Somewhere warm," Keanu said. "You'll be safe." He didn't argue, not because he trusted easily, but because something in Keanu's voice made disbelief impossible. They rode in silence. Keanu drove an old, quiet car, not flashy, not loud. It smelled like pine and worn leather. Leo kept glancing at him, as if trying to convince himself this wasn't a dream he'd wake up from cold and alone. They arrived at a modest home, not a mansion, not a villa, just a home with a small garden and wind chimes that danced in the breeze. Keanu opened the door and let him in. There was tea, soup, even a fresh towel. Leo stood in the center of the living room like a ghost returning to life. "Why are you doing this?" Keanu stirred sugar into 2 mugs and placed one in front of Leo. "Years ago," he said, "someone helped me. Didn't ask for anything. Just looked at me like I was still human when I had nothing. I never forgot that." Leo looked down. "But I'm no one." Keanu shook his head slowly. "You're someone to Patches, and now to me." Leo's throat tightened. No one had said his name in years, and here this man was, offering more than food or warmth. He was offering dignity. The next morning, it began. The photo had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. At first, it was just labeled, "Actor helps homeless man's dog." But then the comments started to flood in. People demanded to know the full story. Others shared their own encounters with Leo over the years. A sandwich here, a quiet nod there, a hand that helped lift a box, or a soft word that stopped a breakdown. Turns out, Leo had touched lives without knowing. And now, the world had finally noticed. Keanu didn't make a statement. He never does. But his actions spoke louder than any press release. People showed up at the clinic. Someone left blankets for Leo. Others offered food, a tent, even a room. Strangers wanted to help, because someone had helped first. In the middle of it all, Leo sat outside the clinic beside Patches, who was wagging his tail again. A young boy approached, holding a small bag of dog treats. "Is he okay now?" the boy asked shyly. Leo nodded. "Thanks to someone who cared." The boy smiled and whispered, "You're a hero." Leo almost laughed. "I'm not." But behind him, Keanu stood quietly, watching the moment unfold. "Maybe not yet," he said, "but the world thinks different now." And as the sky darkened, once again, and Patches rested his head on Leo's foot, something stirred in the city, not just curiosity, but hope. A spark had been lit, and sparks, when shared, can become a flame the darkness cannot ignore. The secret behind the silence, the morning broke with soft golden light crawling across rooftops and through alleyways. But for Leo, it wasn't the sunrise that woke him. It was the sound of people. Real people. Not those who avoided his eyes. Not those who crossed the street, but people standing nearby with curious, kind expressions. Cameras were in their hands, yes, but so were coffee cups, warm blankets, and handmade signs that read, "We see you now." Leo sat beside Patches on a small bench outside the clinic, unsure how to exist in this version of the world. People spoke to him. They didn't just pass. A woman leaned down to offer a sandwich, not wrapped in a paper bag, but served with a napkin like it mattered. Another offered a warm hat, knitted by hand. Even more strange, a man in a suit knelt and whispered, "I saw what happened. I've been where you are. You reminded me what matters." Leo nodded politely, his voice soft and cautious. He wasn't used to this. Kindness was dangerous when you lived in the shadows, because it could be taken away without warning. He glanced over his shoulder. Keanu was there, as he had been since the night before, standing just far enough to give him space, yet close enough to catch him if he stumbled. His presence didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like a reminder that Leo was still part of this world. But not everyone was content with surface headlines. Across the city, inside the editorial room of an independent news magazine, a young journalist named Maya stared at the viral story with furrowed brows. The video clip, now seen by millions, showed a biker kicking a dog. Then a stranger stepping in. Then shock as Keanu Reeves appeared in the frame like some guardian from a forgotten myth. But Maya didn't care about celebrity. She cared about the man who had been hurt, the one no one knew, the one the internet was calling the homeless man with the brave dog. She started digging, city records, old police logs, missing persons, reports. Hours passed in silence as she followed digital trails like breadcrumbs. And then she found something, a photo. Faded, taken years ago. A man smiling beside a young girl holding a wooden birdhouse. The caption read, Leo Brenner, Community. Volunteer teaches neighborhood kids to build with their hands. It wasn't a police report. It was a community award ceremony. Maya leaned back, heart racing. Who was this man before the world stopped seeing him? She made calls, spoke to retired teachers, a pastor from a rundown church, a woman who ran a shelter that had long since closed. Each time she said the name Leo Brenner, something shifted in the voice on the other end. He helped me move when no one else would. He fixed my fence for free. He taught my son patience. But the trail took a turn, deeper into the past. Records showed that Leo had once owned a small construction business. Modest, but steady. Until one accident changed everything. A faulty scaffold, a young employee injured, lawsuits he couldn't afford, insurance claims denied. And in the middle of it all, his wife, already sick, passed quietly in her sleep. Within 6 months, Leo had lost everything. Business, home, purpose. He disappeared from the grid, not because he was weak, but because grief had a way of folding people inward until even their names stopped sounding like their own. Maya sat in silence, the story now heavier than she'd expected. It wasn't a tale of a poor man lucky enough to meet a celebrity. It was about a man the world had once known and simply let go. Later that evening, Maya approached the clinic. She didn't bring a camera crew, just a notebook and respect. Mr. Brenner, she said gently, I think people should hear who you are, not just who they saw in that video. Leo looked at her, his face unreadable. Patches barked once, sensing tension. I'm not anyone, he muttered. Keanu stepped forward, calm and steady. Maybe that's why they need to hear you. The conversation that followed was quiet, tender, and full of memories Leo hadn't spoken aloud in years. He talked about his wife, about the sound she made when she laughed, about how he taught her to build shelves in their first apartment, about the boy he trained to hammer nails who now ran a hardware store. When Maya published the article, she didn't just tell the story, she shared the soul behind it. The man who lost everything never stopped giving, it read. And it took a stranger's kindness to remind the world of its own humanity. Within hours, donations began pouring in. Not just money, but offers. Someone wanted to hire Leo. Another offered him a room to rent, no strings attached. Animal rescue groups offered permanent care for Patches. Children sent hand-drawn pictures of Leo and his dog with capes on their backs. But amid the noise, something unexpected arrived. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. Leo opened it slowly. The words inside made his hands tremble. If you are the same Leo Brenner who taught at the lakeside camp in summer 2001, you saved my life. I was 14. Angry. Broken. You showed me how to hold a hammer and build something that wouldn't fall apart. I never forgot. Thank you. It wasn't signed. Leo read it 3 times, then placed it in his coat pocket, close to his heart. Keanu watched him, his eyes soft. You gave more than you remember. Leo didn't answer. He just sat quietly as Patches nuzzled into his lap, and the city that once ignored him began whispering something new. The face he never forgot. The air inside the studio was thick with anticipation, though the audience whispered softly behind their hands, unsure how to act. This wasn't the usual kind of guest. The man waiting backstage wasn't an athlete, or a singer, or a politician riding a new wave of fame. He was just a man. But somehow that made him more. Because everyone had seen the video, everyone had read the story. Everyone had felt something crack open inside them when they watched a quiet stranger stand up for a homeless man and his dog. Leo sat in the green room, hands folded in his lap. He was wearing a clean flannel shirt someone had donated and jeans. That actually fit. Beside him on the couch lay Patches, tail swaying lazily, now full of energy again, healed but watchful. Cameras would soon turn toward them. Questions would be asked. The lights would be bright, and millions of eyes would be watching. Not for scandal, not for gossip, but for something real, something rare. Humanity. Keanu stood by the door, speaking quietly with the show's producer. He didn't need to be on camera. He didn't care about being seen. But he was here, not as an actor or icon, but as a witness, a quiet supporter, the kind that makes all the difference when your voice feels too small. The host, a warm-voiced woman named Clara, welcomed the audience and began the segment. "Tonight," she said, "we meet someone who reminded the world what quiet strength and loyalty look like, not through words, but through love." As Leo walked out onto the stage, applause rose like a wave. Some people stood. Others clapped with tears already in their eyes. He paused for a moment, stunned. It had been years since anyone had clapped for him, for anything. He blinked hard and gently squeezed Patch's leash. Clara smiled as he sat. "Thank you for being here." "I didn't think I'd ever be here," Leo said, voice raspy, honest. They spoke about the night of the attack, about Patches, about Keanu, about the article Maya wrote, about the letters still coming in. But just as the interview reached its most heartfelt moment, when Leo described what it felt like to sleep with warmth again, not just around him, but inside, something stirred in the audience. A hand went up. Clara noticed it. "Yes?" she asked. Woman stood. And in that moment, the world around Leo shrank into silence. He knew that face. Even though time had changed it, softened the edges, left streaks of silver through the dark hair, he knew. His heart knew. She stepped forward slowly, her voice unsteady. "Leo, is it really you?" Leo stood, hands trembling. "Maria?" Clara stepped back, sensing something deeper was unfolding. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I thought—" "You were gone. For good." Leo couldn't move. His knees almost gave out. Patches whined and pressed against his leg. "I tried to find you," she said. "After your wife passed, we all did. No one knew where you went. We thought you'd left the city." "I couldn't stay," Leo whispered. "I didn't know how to face anyone. Not after the accident. Not after everything fell apart." Maria nodded slowly. "But you saved my son." The words landed like thunder in his chest. "He was the one who fell," she said gently, "from the scaffolding." "Do you remember?" Leo's breath caught. Yes, I do." "He's okay," she said. "He recovered. He walks. He works. He forgave. We all did. But you disappeared, Leo, and it broke his heart that he never got to tell you." Leo sat down, overwhelmed. His head dropped into his hands. The weight of years pressed hard on his shoulders. "Why didn't anyone tell? Me?" he asked, voice cracking. "We couldn't find you," Maria said. "You vanished, and we didn't try hard enough." There was a silence so deep even the cameras seemed to pause. Then, from the wings of the stage, someone else stepped forward, a tall young man, early 30s, broad shoulders, soft eyes. "Dad," he said quietly. Leo looked up, confused. The young man smiled gently. "I always called you that. Remember?" Leo blinked, and then it hit him. Not his son by blood, but by bond. Nathan, the boy he'd mentored. The one who came to his workshop after school, who hammered nails too hard, who was always one step from breaking, but never did. Leo stood slowly. His voice caught in his throat. You're... Nathan stepped into his arms without waiting for permission. The embrace was long, wordless, healing. The crowd erupted in soft applause. Tears shimmered in 1,000 eyes. Leo whispered, "I thought you forgot me." Nathan shook his head. "Never." And Keanu, standing in the shadows, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. This wasn't just a reunion. It was redemption on live television, in front of a world hungry for hope. A man who had lost everything found not just his dog, not just his dignity, but the broken pieces of his past gently handed back by the people who still loved him. The offer and the shadow, the days that followed felt like a dream stitched together from moments Leo never thought he'd live to see again. He was no longer just a forgotten man on a bench. He was a symbol now. Not of fame, not of charity, but of something quieter and deeper. Resilience. The kind that survives winters without warmth and memories without names. Everywhere he went, people smiled. Some nodded with respect. Others cried just seeing him walk by with Patches at his side. And yet, deep inside, Leo moved carefully, like a man who still feared the ground might vanish beneath his feet again. Maria stayed in touch. Nathan called every evening. They were rebuilding something together, not a past, but a future they had once given up on. And Keanu remained close. Not as a guide, not as a guardian, but as a steady presence. The kind that doesn't speak much but always shows up when it counts. Then came the letter. Thick paper, gold trim, no return address. Leo opened it slowly in the small apartment that a kind donor had arranged for him. The words were formal, distant at first, but the message was clear. A global foundation known for rehabilitation and social impact wanted to partner with him. They had seen what the world saw, his humility, his story, his strength. And they believed he could help lead a new campaign called From the Ground Up, focused on rebuilding dignity for the homeless, the addicted, and the forgotten. They wanted him to speak, to travel, to represent something far bigger than himself. Leo sat in silence for hours. Patches nuzzled against his knee, sensing his stillness. The thought of standing on more stages, facing more cameras, scared him, not because of the attention, but because he still felt like a man recovering from silence. What if the words failed him when it mattered most? What if the weight crushed him again? He told Keanu that night, unsure of what to expect. They sat outside, on a wooden bench in the apartment courtyard, a soft breeze rustling the leaves above. "They want me to lead something," Leo said quietly. "They want to give me a voice." Keanu sipped his tea, then glanced over. Maybe because they finally heard it. "But I'm no leader," Leo muttered. "I'm just trying to survive." Keanu nodded. "You survive things most wouldn't. That already makes you more than most." Leo looked away, unsure how to answer. But while hope was blooming quietly in one corner of his life, a different wind stirred in the distance. Across the city, inside a dimly lit bar, a man sat hunched over his phone, watching a clip from the show. The moment Maria stood, the moment Nathan hugged Leo, the headlines running across the screen like a crown. Forgotten hero finds family again. The man's eyes narrowed. His fingers clenched. His name was Derek. And years ago, he had been Leo's business partner, or so he claimed. But in truth, Derek had been the one who forged the insurance documents that left Leo vulnerable. It was Derek who disappeared when the lawsuit struck, taking what money remained. and leaving Leo to face ruin alone. No one ever proved it. No one ever found him. Until now. Seeing Leo back in the public eye filled Derek with a rage he couldn't explain. Not because he cared about justice, but because he hated the idea that Leo had found peace while he rotted in regret. He made a call. "I want everything. On him," he hissed into the phone. "Dig up whatever's left." Across town, unaware of the storm approaching, Leo accepted the offer. Not because he believed he was ready, but because maybe someone like him, someone who'd fallen so far, could help others climb back up. And maybe, just maybe, if he kept walking forward, the darkness behind him would finally stay where it belonged. But darkness, when threatened, often fights back. And as Leo prepared for his first public speech in another city, someone was already planning to twist his story into something ugly. Someone who wanted to drag the past into the light, not to heal it, but to use it. And so, in the quiet before the next rise, the question waited like a shadow beneath the bed. What happens when your past doesn't stay buried? The speech and the storm, the stage was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that comes before something big, something life-altering. The auditorium was filled, but it didn't feel loud. It felt expectant. Soft murmurs floated in the air like dust in sunlight. Cameras were ready, lights pointed at a single wooden podium. Behind it, a screen read from the ground up. And somewhere backstage, Leo stood staring at his reflection in the mirror. He adjusted the collar of the plain shirt someone had pressed for him that morning. It still felt strange wearing clean clothes, but not in a bad way. Just different. Next to him, Patches lay calmly on the floor, head tilted, eyes watching. Leo reached down and scratched behind his ear. "They're waiting," a voice said gently. It was Keanu. Leo turned, eyes full of quiet worry. "What if I forget what to say?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Then just say what's in your heart. It's never let you down." Leo stepped into the light. The applause was warm, not thunderous but steady, respectful, real. He walked to the podium, Patches close behind him. He took a breath, paused, then looked out across the sea of strangers and found faces that weren't strangers at all. Maria, sitting near the front. Nathan beside her. Maya with a notepad in her lap. Keanu standing near the back, quiet as ever. "My name is Leo," he began, voice slow and honest, and for a long time, I forgot who that was. He spoke not like a speaker, but like a man, sitting beside a fire, sharing truths with friends. He talked about the fall, not in dramatic words, but in the small losses that pile up until you vanish. About sleeping on benches and building stories in his head just to survive. About Patches, and how a small, loyal creature gave him something to care for when he couldn't care for himself. About the night everything changed, not because someone saved him, but because someone saw him. The crowd listened, not blinking, not shifting, just breathing together. "Dignity," Leo said softly, "isn't given by money or fame. It's given when someone looks at you and doesn't look away." Applause followed, slow and rising like dawn. But as Leo stepped down, heart full, something was already happening in the background. A man approached the stage crew with a flash drive. He wore a blazer, too clean for the occasion. Said he had something urgent, something the organizers needed to see. Said it was about Leo, truth from his past. It was Derek. He had spent days digging, finding old court papers, twisting them, editing emails, building a case of deception that painted Leo not as a victim, but a fraud. Someone who had orchestrated his fall for sympathy. It was lies, wrapped in thin facts. He wanted the audience to see it now. Live. But Maya intercepted it. She had followed Derek, quietly. Sensed something was off. "You're Derek," she said, stepping between him and the screen technician. He Froze. I know who you are, she continued. You forged the papers. You vanished when Leo needed you most. Derek scoffed. Prove it. Maya smiled slowly and held up her phone. Already did. Earlier that day, with help from contacts, she'd found archived emails Derek thought were long gone. Signed documents, voice memos, even a video of Derek boasting years ago about getting away clean. She handed the phone to the technician instead. Minutes later, as the audience filed out, unsure what the commotion near the back was about, the screen lit up with a message. This man tried to rewrite the truth, but the truth speaks louder now. A short clip played. Derek's voice, laughing, bragging, and then the documents, signatures, the lie unraveling live. People gasped. Leo stood frozen, confused. Maya walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't need to fight anymore. We fought for you. Derek was escorted out quietly. No spotlight, no drama, just silence. And in that moment, Leo realized something deep. He didn't have to prove his worth. He didn't have to carry the past alone. The story was no longer about falling. It was about rising and who stands beside you when you do. The Foundation offered him more than just a campaign. They offered him a role, mentor, leader, storyteller. Not because he had all the answers, but because he understood the silence of those who had none. Weeks passed. Then months. Leo's face appeared on posters. Not as a celebrity, but as a reminder. His words were printed in shelters, his story told in classrooms, his voice used in places where voices were too often ignored. Patches remained at his side. Keanu visited when he could. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the sky turn colors. On one of those evenings, Leo turned to him and said, I thought my life was over. Keanu looked out across the horizon. Sometimes it has to break, so it can be rebuilt, stronger. Leo nodded. Thank you for everything. Keanu smiled. You did it. I just reminded you who you were. And as night settled in, and the stars blinked awake, Leo leaned back with peace in his chest, a healed heart beside him, and the world, at last, listening.